Agriculture is an important aspect of the country for the food we need for recreational activities, such as cookouts, cakes, and frozen treats during summer and to last us through the winter months. Food safety regulations exist to ensure the peaceful time we spend with our loved ones. However, the cost of having such foods readily available comes at an unforeseen cost to others. Agricultural exceptionalism, the concept that agricultural industry is often treated differently from other forms of industry in terms of regulation and accepted practices that would be considered violations in other forms of industries, has had effects on our society that are often unbeknownst to the general population due to the accumulated problems being unaddressed. Agricultural exceptionalism can be seen in the ways that farms are allowed to employ younger children to use heavy machinery. Farms are allowed to not provide amenities to their farm workers such as utilities or breaks, and it is accepted that the farms will inevitably have pollution. While these issues are often addressed at a federal level through laws and federal agencies, there are often exemptions in these regulations to give the agricultural industry some leeway. These exemptions are then sometimes mitigated by state and local regulations. However, they are often not enough to regulate at a preventative level and can, at most, only address violations after they have been brought to the attention of the proper authorities. One such form of agricultural exceptionalism that we will be discussing is runoff waste from farms, and the effects that it has on both the non-agricultural land and how the runoff waste may be causing a positive feedback loop that causing problems that eventually return to the farms. Agricultural runoff occurs when an excess amount of water drenches farmland, through abundant rain or overwatering, causing the excess water to run out of the soil, taking the pesticides, nutrients, and bacteria towards other areas. The likely scenario is the runoff leading to water sources where the mix of different ingredients can alter the constitution of the body of water and cause damage to the ecosystem of the water body, be it pond, lake, river, basin, or ocean. A further problem is the overabundance of bacteria and fertilizers in landlocked water bodies, where algae blooms can hurt the aquatic life through removing oxygen from the water, producing toxic waste that would lead to the aquatic life suffering. Meanwhile, the introduction of bacteria alongside the nutrients from biological waste and fertilizer allows the potential bacterial pathogens to proliferate, which infects the aquatic animals, the animals that then consume those animals, but also infects migratory birds that swim in that water. A study by Tawakkol showed that the bacteria found in migratory birds were of similar diversity and antibacterial resistance to those of the nearby farm fowls, indicating that migratory birds could be a source for bacteria exposure to farm animals. The pathogenic bacteria from the runoff waste infesting nearby ponds and lakes can be carried by birds on their feathers and can fall as they fly over crops and feedlots. The Clean Water Act and state regulations have mitigated some of these problems, but they still have yet to fully address the problem. The Clean Water Act was enacted after a series of failed attempts to address the pollution of water systems. However, after the EPA was established, the power to regulate the pollution of USA waters was enhanced through the Clean Water Act in 1972. Over many years, the Clean Water Act has placed regulations to prevent and monitor the intentional discharge of toxic, chemical pollutants into water systems. Yet, there were carved out exceptions for the agricultural industry, and permits are allowed for acceptable waste management into water systems. While compliance monitoring is done for the Clean Water Act, the agriculture industry is still allowed to do an acceptable amount of pollution. However, the practice that causes runoff has been an issue that has been addressed more by the farmers than the government. A growing, interconnected network of concerned farmers, either for monetary issues of growing fertilizer and feeding costs, or from their own desire to lower their aid of external influences, as well as desiring safer, more effective farming practices, have begun to develop farming techniques that improve their agricultural yield. Through agricultural studies, they've sought to improve farming practices that prevent runoff, soil erosion, and retain soil nutrients, while simultaneously reusing the biological waste that they may already produce from their crops and animals to lessen their reliance on industrial fertilizers and outside water. The use of fertilizers and poor agricultural practices has, over time, degraded the quality of the soil that farmers work on. This lower soil quality makes it easier for nutrients to leach out of the soil as well as cause the soil to be washed away. This causes the soil to require more fertilizer, causing a positive feedback loop. By adopting better agricultural practices, small farmer owners are taking back control of their soil and nutrient needs while simultaneously lowering runoff of waste. While the country may be moving towards a post-agricultural exceptionalist society, it is being spearheaded by the farmers that could take advantage of the exceptions they are given. However, through various social and economic factors, farmers have found it better to work within a framework that prevents pollution. To move towards this post-exceptionalist world, the government would need to intervene. Not by regulating the waste, but, as they have in the past, acknowledging that the runoff is inevitable and assisting the farmers to mitigate the runoff. Incentivizing an agricultural system that uses regenerative farming techniques and pushing the country into a post-agricultural exceptionalist standard. The accumulative effect of the pollution cannot be understated. As the runoff concentrates and is carried out via rivers and streams close to the farmlands, they infect lakes, beaches, and oceans, destroying the local ecosystem and introducing concentrated bacteria into the ecosystem.